Hey guys, welcome to the Cozy Writing channel. So, things are going well this week despite all the obstacles the universe has thrown at me. We've had 2 winter storms. We had one Monday and we had one Wednesday. So I had kids home Monday and I had kids home Wednesday. It's Friday now. My husband has been out of town on a business meeting most of the week, so I've been single parenting it, which is super fun. And then this morning, the garbage disposal decided to bust a leak. It needs to be replaced, but there's water all over the kitchen. So despite all the obstacles the universe has just lobbed at me this week, the writing's actually going really well. You wouldn't really expect that to happen after this crazy ass week, but it's working. I'm not doing actual writing. I actually don't really know how to describe this. My first draft isn't like I can hand it to someone and they can read it and go, wow, I really like the way you're talking about this or that. For me, a first draft it's really rough, and it's actually almost like an extended outline. It's paragraphs, and it's me talking in, the action isn't in third person. It's just like, and Simone says this to this character, and this character reacts like this, and then they go to this room and they do that. It's really clunky. It's really probably hard for someone else to read and understand what's going on, but it kind of lays things out for me, and that's what I call my first rough draft. It's not something you could ever give to anyone and say, hey, what do you think about it? It's just me laying out the ideas of the book and the way they need to go, and it's more than just saying, in chapter 1, this happens. It's kind of a really in-depth walkthrough of, this character walks into this room, this character does this person closes the door. Things that are important that need to be said, it tells me where I need to say them and when I need to say them. But that's been going really well. I have episode 1 completed. I'm almost done with episode 2, and I'm not sure how many episodes are going to be in the book. An episode right now, as I'm writing out, feels pretty long. Like, I threw episode 1 into Ulysses, where I normally write my work, just to see what the word count was going to be. And the word count for that was already 1,600 words. So, I don't know, multiply that by at least 4, and that will give you what the chapter/episode is going to be. And it's pretty big. I mean, we're talking like 5,000 words. So it might need to be broken down. That might be too big of a chunk for someone to digest. I'm not sure. I won't know that really until I've actually written that part out, and then I go back through or I give it to my husband or something, and we read it and we're like, this is too much. This needs to be broken in half. But that's the experiment I'm running right now, is writing via episodes. And every time I explain to someone, I've done to 3 people now, explaining how I'm writing this new novel, picturing it as like a show, and that's why I'm calling them episodes, because in my head, that's what they are. I see them visually, and then I write it down. Everybody always gives me really weird looks, so I'm not sure if this experiment is going to work if everyone I've talked to about it has been like, oh, about it. We'll have to see how it works out. I'm hoping that it will play out really well, and that it will flow really well through the different characters and cutting to scenes that have a different character, rather than writing a whole chapter with Chris. Chris doesn't need a whole chapter to himself. He needs you to see little snippets that are happening in his life, so you understand why he's going to make some of the decisions he's going to make over the course of the book. He doesn't need a whole 3,000 word chapter to explain about why he's in the doctor's office with Wilhelm, and how Wilhelm's behaving, and how Chris is internalizing all this pressure and pain that he's feeling. You only need to see that in about 1,000 words. And I understand I could just make a chapter that's 1,000 words, But the OCD part of me doesn't really like that. I like my chapters to be pretty uniform as much as possible. So having short little chapters just really doesn't appeal to me, but I'm willing to concede that that might need to happen if my little experiment with calling them episodes and laying them out like an episode doesn't work. In other news, I may have finally stumbled upon a critique partner, which is wonderful. I really need that in my life. I need someone that I can bounce ideas off of and talk to and kind of get that weird little crush beta reader read mid-work. I mean, that's something that I really was lacking before. I was just kind of off on my own, like working in my own little universe, and I really felt that lack of having someone else to talk about, and not just like my husband who doesn't really understand what I'm doing. I needed to talk to another writer or like a really intensive reader about that. And I have people like that in my life who do that, but they're so busy and I don't want to bother them with my stuff. So why not find a critique partner who's also looking for that and is offering up their time to be that person for someone else, as long as that other person does it back for them? It seems like it's a win-win for both people. And I do need to work out my magic for the book series. I know what you're thinking. The first book is about witches and they have magic and everybody's using magic willy-nilly. But I didn't need to figure out the magic rules in that book. I was kind of like soft magic. People were using it, but it wasn't integral to the plot in a way. It didn't solve the plot by being magic. So the magic could happen in the sidelines and not really affect anyone. And the main character who discovers how to use magic, she doesn't know why or how or even how any of this is working. So I didn't need to stop the action and then explain how this magic is working and what the rules are. But now that I'm working on the second book, things are starting off a little bit slower, possibly, but I'm also throwing a lot of mentions and things that happened in the past. If you follow the vlog, you know I was previously talking about a then and now structure to the book, which to note I have completely abandoned. It just wasn't working. As much as I wanted it to work, it wasn't doing it. So I'm glad I found that out during the outline stage and not actually during the writing stage. That I didn't just push through it and try to make it work. I'm glad I discovered that early. When I'm throwing this stuff in, like the things that happened in 1995, I'm not blatantly showing the reader what happened. Instead, I'm showing the reader the after effects of the things that happened from 1995 through some of the characters' eyes. Mostly Simone, my older witch. She's going back basically to the scene of the crime from 1995 and looking at the damage that is done and then thinking about how she can prevent it this time, but that's also leading the reader with a little bit of mystery and not knowing what's going on. So I've abandoned the then and now structure, and I forgot where I was going with this. Oh, right, I was talking about magic structures. Anyways, so I'm doing all of this, and now is the time to kind of stop and explain a little bit more about how magic works in this universe. And some of it I actually need to figure out for myself. I'd say I know probably about 95% about how magic works and what the rules are and who can do it and who can't and where the loopholes are, but I haven't ever really just put it down, I haven't put it on a piece of paper. I haven't written it down to like finalize concrete these rules and figure out how this is working. I think this weekend I probably need to take some time. I'll have to search on the internet and see if there's like any kind of like steps like to make a magic system. And even though I already have one, maybe I'm thinking I'll use those, probably a blog post or something about how to make a magic system, and just make sure that I'm ticking all the boxes and I haven't forgotten anything, because that's going to be something that probably will kick me in the butt maybe in book 3 or something, just something further down the road that I haven't figured out every tiny detail about the magic, and suddenly I need to, but what if whatever I make up on the spot there doesn't mesh with what's in book 2 or book 1? So since I'm in the early stages of book 2, I think just this weekend I'm going to take some time and I'm going to run through my magic system and make sure it's solid and that everything works and I know concretely how magic in this universe functions and where the energy comes from and how it's expelled and what the ramifications are, etc., etc., etc. So that's the goal for this weekend. Other than that, I will see you guys next week and we'll talk about how I did over the weekend, despite all the chaos that's going to happen. Like we had to buy a new garbage disposal and the kids are home and my husband's finally home, so complete chaos. But I'll let you know how I made out with episode 2 and rolling into episode 3. And I think I'm going to be bringing in at least 2 more characters, and I think the start of those characters will probably happen at the end of chapter. Listen to me, I'm like in the old habits. In the end of episode 3, introducing that new character, and I also need to think of a cliffhanger about how to end episode 2, because right now it just kind of, in my mind, I can't see it yet. And I know what needs to happen in the chapter, but I haven't laid it out in a dramatic and readable and exciting way. And I feel like that's always the struggle for me, is that I can see this story, but laying it out and presenting it to a reader in a way that sounds exciting and awesome is, I feel like sometimes where I fall flat. Sometimes I have to rewrite scenes over and over again until they hit that right pitch of urgent and I want to know what's coming next.